Cartoons are supposed to be enjoyed for kids. They're meant for a younger demographic, but you can still enjoy them when you're older. I still watch them as well, and I'm an adult. I think cartoons are pretty sick. I already said that before. But another thing I also really like is horror. And then when horror and cartoons get mixed together, I think they can make some pretty cool ass shit. They can have some pretty cool villains in some TV shows as well. Like in Gravity Falls, that shapeshifter motherfucker that was Rage Bay and Dipper the whole time. And then in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 2012 show in specific, I think has some pretty cool horror villains. And this is my second time recording this episode or video because I forgot to mention an episode. That I was talking one of the horror episodes that I had down, or I didn't have down, but I completely forgot to have. I really got to mention it because I didn't have it down, but it also is still pretty good. But anyways, the first episode, the first horror episode we talking about with Ninja Turtles is the Croaking. This is probably the first one I've seen that had to do with horror. Actually, not the first one. The first one would probably be either Squirrelnoid's Invasion or the Fungus Humongous. But I thought this one would be probably scarier than the other two. I thought the other two were pretty cool. They had some pretty cool events. But this one I just thought was crazy and just scary. I didn't think that they would do this in a Ninja Turtles show. In this one, pretty much, there's the main villain in this episode is inspired by Jason Voorhees. It's like the Swamp Thing, but he just went to the gym every day. It's some big, tall, beefy ass, big ass dude. He was actually able to fuck around all the turtles. These turtles are able to do ninjutsu. These turtles are able to teleport with their rotten eggs that puff out lean gas. And they're also able to kind of take on the Shredder. They're literally trained by one of the greatest ninjutsu masters of the century, Splinter. And this monster just managed to, fuck him about they were his sons or whatever. He managed to actually really overpower them easily. I thought this creature was pretty crazy because the thing he does to Raph, in the episode, Leo, he's pretty injured and shit, and Raph is constantly, looking by him and all. He's constantly sitting by him, and then one day, I think in the house, they ran out of electricity. So Raph went out, get some wood so they don't freeze their balls off, so they can have a fire. When Raph was chopping up wood, the big Swamp Thing came up behind him and just dragged him away. And then when Donnie and Mikey later on found him, bro got turned into a dog or whatever. He got turned into a little Shih Tzu with a flower on top of his head. And I was what did bro do to Raph? He just completely changed him up. He just completely fucked him up. He made him look as if Raph had uncontrollable hair growth or whatever. He just was so hairy and shit. So then Mikey and Donnie, they end up getting kidnapped by the Swamp Thing, by the Jason Voorhees monster. I'm pretty sure that was who he's inspired by because Casey Jones has this mask, this hockey mask, and that's what Jason wears. And then when he was fighting Casey, he grabbed the mask and just put that on. I was like, yeah, nice fit. This will hide my horribly deformed, disfigured face. Because earlier on in the episode, the monster was wearing a bag over his face and had one hole in the eye. And that's actually Jason in part 2. So I think that's a pretty cool, sick reference. But anyways, when Mikey and Donnie get captured, they get strung up like punching bags. The monster's about to go training for a boxing fight. And then he just grabs Raphael, who's a giant Shih Tzu, and basically just starts draining him out of all his life. Not by sucking him off, by just basically absorbing all the mutagen, all Raph's life force, it seems inside of himself, because it makes him stronger and shit. It's he was sucking all the drugs out of Raph that he did earlier on in the day, and it's just making himself stronger and more powerful. He literally reduced Raphael to a pile of shit on the ground. He literally turned him into mush with a flower on top. I don't know how Donnie managed to get Raph back. He somehow did. He by draining all the mutagen out of the swamp dude and putting it back into the mushy pile of hair that Raphael was. Raphael came back. I don't know how. Donnie's a fucking super genius. He has the same IQ as Einstein or whatever. He can make anything. Also, this monster was super tough. I could tell it was referenced by Jason because of the masks, the bag, and how tough he was. They could you'd stab him in the face, he still wouldn't go down. You stab him with swords, it still wouldn't happen. They had to even when they chopped off an arm, he's still able to put it back together he's Emmett and he's from the Lego movie. It's a Lego arm or something. It took so much to put him down. They had to chain him up to a tree, and I can't remember how they killed him, but I do remember Donnie, he just drained all the mutagen out of the monster, but they had to kill him first. But yeah, I thought that was the first one I seen, and I thought that was pretty crazy. It was also pretty cool as well. But one of the turtles there, it's yo, the fuck, I never thought we'd see a turtle dying. The next one is, I thought this one was also really cool. I'd say my top 3 actually out of all these lists is probably the Croaking, this one, and another one I'm actually gonna be talking about. It has something to do with a car. In this one, the villains are basically inspired by Freddy Krueger, I'd say, because they're basically these dream demons. They go inside of your dreams and they just basically scare you, fuck around with you, play with you like you're their toy, and they until you die. Because in this episode, all the four turtles are asleep, and the episode, I think the way the episode starts off is pretty cool. It's like it basically just gets you right back right into the episode. No intro, no like sunshine and rainbows. It's just Donnie running from something. He hides into a dumpster. There's already a beaver in there who's just been living in the dumpster. He's been treating the dumpster like it's a swimming pool. He's been chilling there waiting for Donnie. Donnie just keeps running, trying to hide somewhere, and the beaver, constantly keeps getting him. All the four turtles in this episode are asleep, and they end up having their own different nightmares that like kind of suit them. With Raphael, his nightmare was he's scared of snakes, so he ends up being strapped down to like a chair, like he's being interrogated by the mafia or whatever. And there's like by snakes, they're just wrapping up all around him. And his beaver, I'd say he's able to shapeshift or whatever, but we only seen him take the form of a snake, and this snake just keeps scaring the shit out of Raph, just terrifying him. Also, the music, and I say with Raph's nightmare, I think it's pretty cool. It's like some, I don't know, heavy metal shit. It's like some aggressive, fast-paced metal shit. It really does suit Raphael's personality. That was pretty a realistic fear. He's scared of snakes. He's scared of cockroaches and snakes. Pretty realistic fears. Next one is Mikey. Mikey, out of all the turtles, he seemed to be actually grand. He seemed to be the only one that was like sleeping like a baby. He's like sleeping grand. The other guys just sleeping like they just have a lot in their mind. They're just, fully on stressed out. Mikey's dream, he's basically like in this dib dab land. He's basically in like candy diabetes land world. It looks like a Mario level out of Super Mario Galaxy or whatever. It also reminds me of the candy world in Gravity Falls. That one episode where Mabel ends up like falling to sleep because she ends up overdosing on like dib dab, and she ends up like going into this candy world, and it's like full of sweets and everything. There's like a big friendly dog and shit. That's kind of what happens to Mikey. His beaver seems pretty chill at first. His beaver just seems to like basically like my dog, just wants to have fun and just wants to enjoy life. But with Mikey, even he ends up getting the shit stick that was pulled out of someone's ass, because Mikey was having fun with the beaver at first. But then the beaver just kept on throwing the ball at him. He's like playing dodgeball, but Mikey just wasn't actually just standing still like a statue. And Mikey was just getting bored. It's like, yo, can we just like do something else now? It's like, it's bad if Mikey gets bored, because he gets hyped for anything. He's happy about anything. Even the slightest thing would hype him up, like eating pizza. To him, he said, oh yeah, it feels like flying. So he eats a pizza, he feels like he's on a jetpack just flying through the air. So his one was pretty shit, even though it started off as good, and he seemed to be kind of in the best shape out of all of them. Next one is Leo. His is actually pretty cool as well. His nightmare basically was, he was like, I'm not sure if this is part of the nightmare, if this actually happened. No, I'm pretty sure it's part of the nightmare, I'd say, because at the start of his nightmare, he ends up walking around the forest. He's just gone for a walk, gone for a smoke, and then a big blue rock just ends up, barreling out of the sky, just ends up landing on the earth, landing near Leo. And the first thing bro goes to do is, he goes to touch that shit. He thinks he's going to get some Superman powers or whatever. So he touches that shit, ends up, pulsating and shit, ends up blasting him back against a tree. It ended up healing all his injuries and all, because earlier on in the last season, he ended up getting the shit kicked out of him by Shredder and his goons. They basically they battered the fuck out of him. So then, Leo, he had like a broken leg, and when he touched the rock, it healed his leg and everything. And Leo, he felt like a really energetic monkey. He just decided to start jumping all around the place. He's, really acting like a ninja. So then this beaver just comes out of nowhere, and it starts fighting Leo. And Leo cannot manage to get a single hit on him. This beaver is walloping him. This beaver is beating the shit out of him. Like, the beaver uppercuts Leo up into the air, trying to send him into space or whatever. The beaver jumps up after him like he had the bouncy boots on him, and then he hits Leo again. He just keeps attacking Leo over and over again, and Leo did not seem to do anything about it. And it's like, that fear kind of seems more realistic, because the fight is just never ending. Leo's just constantly fighting. It's like, if he gets tired, he's kind of fucked. But this beaver, he seems to have like unlimited stamina or whatever. He has like a bunch of haste potions in his inventory. I think I went over Donnie's fears. I think I went over Mikey's nightmares. Donnie's nightmare actually seemed, pretty realistic as well. He's like, Donnie's actually kind of remind me of Pennywise. It's kind of seemed like the most hallucinogenic or whatever, because every time he's running, he'd end up at a different location. He ended up like at a school. A bunch of lockers ended up, flinging themselves open, and the beaver a bunch of beavers were crawling after Donnie. His seemed pretty fucked. All their nightmares were pretty fucked. And the beavers themselves, the villains, I thought they were pretty, cool and evil as well. They seemed really malicious. They seemed like they didn't really care. They just seemed like pure evil. Maybe even worse than like Shredder, because I think he has somewhat of an honor. He'd still want the good fight. These beavers don't care. You're just like, right, if you're shitting yourself, that's like a 5-star meal to me. You're tasty as fuck. You're gonna get munched on. In the episode ends up being like all of them being the same nightmare. They end up playing a nightmare multiplayer, and they basically just like getting the shit kicked out of them by the beavers. And the only reason they win as well is because some schizo who hasn't slept for like 40 years. He was keeping like this book. Casey had to fight him for the book, and then Casey ends up smashing that shit open. Ends up releasing the beavers, but they just come out as like little mini, gnomes or whatever. It's like they were so scared in the dreams, and then in real life you could just like stomp on them like a fucking fly, and that's it. So yeah, I thought those villains were actually pretty cool. They also had like pretty evil personalities. Next one is the Squirrelnoids invasion. This is an episode back in the other season when they're still in like New York City, which just looks like Fallout 4 or whatever. Anyone barely ever hangs around there. It's like, population like fucking 5. So in this episode, there's these mutant squirrels, and they basically, this is based off of the Xenomorph, I'd say. It's just too close. I'd say it's literally in reference from the Xenomorph, because the way these squirrels work is that they go inside of you through your mouth, and then you end up puking them back up like poisoned food or whatever, and they end up multiplying inside of your food, so inside of your stomach. So it's like you're getting pregnant with them, but you're delivering it out through your mouth. And these squirrels, what they're able to do is they're able to transform them later on into mutant squirrels, because the turtles find the dude who this has happened to. They bring him back later, try and fix him up, see what's wrong with him, and then there ends up being mutant squirrels all around the gap, because one of them going to Raphael, he ends up being pregnant and throwing the squirrels back up, and it ends up being multiple in the lair, and then the squirrels end up growing up into like big ass alien kind of squirrelnoids things, which is actually pretty accurate to how the xenomorph would happen, because xenomorphs, when they're like children and shit, they kind of skip childhood. They kind of fast forward through that shit, and then they just grow up into like adults in just a couple of hours. I think the design of the squirrelnoids is actually really cool. They do really have some similarities to the xenomorph. They have like this kind of domed head. It looks like a lava lamp. It looks like there's a green monster inside their head or whatever. They also have like a secondary tongue, which is just like a little mini squirrel head, which would be similar to how the xenomorph is, because they have like another inner jaw inside their jaw. It's like a secondary one. And these squirrels, they were fucking up the turtles as well. The turtles were so scared shitless to go out in the sewers. They had to send their little like metalhead robot butler to go after the squirrelnoids. Mikey's actually the one that ended up managing to get rid of the squirrelnoids, because they're all chilling like this part of the sewers. They're all getting surrounded, and it seemed like Mikey just ran off with the brothers. He's like, alright, see you later, I'm just gonna go find myself a new family. You're all gonna die anyway. So then Mikey, he ends up luring the squirrels over with like some popcorn. He ends up luring him over with like some movie snacks. That's how he defeated the squirrels, by literally with food. Such a Mikey thing to do. And then he ends up flushing him down like a giant little toilet or whatever, pretty much, drain like little pipe, and they end up getting flushed away. But Mikey also had to get himself saved because he nearly got took. But yeah, I really like the designs of the squirrelnoids. I thought they were pretty cool. They looked alien, but they weren't aliens. Well, they're just mutant squirrels, but they're still pretty cool. Next one is, I thought this one was actually a really cool episode. I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't as scary as the other ones. It was still intense as shit though. I thought the villain seemed pretty cracked. Basically, in this episode, the villain's like this mutant car. It's like this demonic car that ends up running Casey and like Donnie off of the road. When they come back from the grocery shop, and Casey's driving the van. He's driving the little Scooby-Doo mystery wagon, and then this car just comes flying out of nowhere, bashes into them. Then Casey's like, I'm not having that. So he ends up racing dude, ends up bashing into him, but then the car just runs him off the road. Later on, Casey and Donnie work together. They make like this futuristic car. Ends up being like made with like crank tech and shit. It looks pretty cool. It looks like it could speed through like the city in 2 seconds. So Casey ends up racing the car again, and Donnie and Casey have this plan where basically Donnie, they're gonna get close enough to the car. Donnie hops on the car, he rips the person right out of the car, and it turns out that dude was mutated. He ends up just being a regular human. The car itself is a mutant. So then the car ends up munching up Donnie like a Subway sandwich, and basically ends up taking over Donnie like a Venom symbiote or whatever, because when Donnie went inside this car, he ended up being changed. He ended up being mutated. He ended up looking like a character out of Monsters, Inc. His head got so much more massive. He kind of like had a Minecraft blockhead, and he's just seemed more monstrous like kind of more creepy and more terrifying. So then Casey, he has to race this car to save Donnie, but Casey, he's not going to play fair because I don't think the car was even going to play fair. He has to like race him to like this place called Dead Man's Curve. Even if Casey did beat the car, I wouldn't say the car would just, the car would have just double crossed and be like, no, I get to keep your friend actually. So basically what Casey does is he goes on top of the car, he starts fighting the monster, and he ends up managing to rip Donnie off of the car and, ends up saving his ass. He ends up turning back to normal. But the car's still not done with him yet. The car's still hungry. And he just saw his second course meal and he's going to eat two Donnie and Casey. So, in this episode, I'd say they got really lucky as well because Donnie, his plan was, supposedly for a genius dude, he had a pretty shit idea here. His plan was the car was charging at him. He puts a stick inside of its mouth and the stick just ends up snapping. I'm like, bro, it's like a wooden toothpick or whatever, pretty much, to the car. And the car was about to, munch them out. The car was about to kill him. But then the mystery wagon just comes out of nowhere and just completely, it just fucks him off of the cliff. And he ends up being bombed in midair, like someone just shot a missile at him. So yeah, they got pretty lucky with that one. I thought the car villain was also pretty cool. Maybe not as scary as the other villains. He might have been a bit goofy with how like he's trying to be insane and shit. But he was still pretty sick. And the next one is Fungus Humongous. This is an episode back when they were chilling in New York City, and this episode is pretty much an evil fair mushroom that how he works is he farts in your face and then you inhale the fart and you just see like your deepest, darkest fears and shit. So for Casey's, his was like a bunch of rats. There's actually a scene where they're chilling in the sewers, like a whole river of rats just ends up coming across Casey, just end up crawling all over him and shit, and Casey just whacks them away. But from the perspective of like the turtles and April, he just looks like he's fighting his like invisible abusive dad or whatever. He just looks like he's fighting nothing. So then for Mikey's actually, his would make sense as well because Mikey's like super into comics. He's like nerdy when it comes into fiction and shit. His was the squirrel annoy, so he'd be like fighting a mutant squirrel, pretty much. And then with Raph's was like a bunch of cockroaches. He seemed like the most realistic. Like there are people that are scared of cockroaches. His was actually probably one of the most kind of disgusting ones as well because there's a scene where Raph, he gets like tied up, he gets chained up because he's acting like a wild dog with rabies. So he ends up being tied up. And Donnie and Leo are trying to figure out a cure for this fair shit. It's like, how do we stop people shitting themselves? So then and he's looking at them like two giant humanoid cockroaches. It's like two people in like cockroach suits and they're just cosplaying as like cockroaches or whatever. And then Mikey just pops up out of nowhere beside Raph and he ends up like giving Raphael a hug. But from Raphael's perspective, it looks like the cockroach is trying to like shift him or whatever. It's like, it's little fucking pincers like wiggling all over Raph and shit. Like, I feel sorry for Raph. As in his position, it'd be like pretty disgusting and uncomfortable. It makes Raph puke his guts out. And with Leo's, I'd say his is the most realistic as a leader. His fear is basically that everyone will end up leaving him. He failed everyone. They all left and we were like, right, we're just gonna find ourselves a new leader. You're a useless piece of shit. So he actually ends up being the one defeating the creature as well, which I think is fitting because like the whole thing was he's supposed to get his fear over like abandoning everyone, and he managed to actually save the whole team from like the giant mushroom that's just sending his little Mario Goomba minions around. Donnie's fear just kind of seemed like so like goofy, just kind of reinforced that like, yo, you are the king of Simptown, you are at the top of Simp Hill, and you're the biggest simp. One of the biggest simps in fiction because his fears are like, April doesn't want me. April looks at me as if I'm like a blob on the ground. She thinks I'm disgusting. And like, that's just Donnie because he's obsessed with April. The second he saw April, he looked at April as if she's a fucking angel that just got sent from the clouds in heavens. Like, get over it, man. You're a mutant and she's a human. April's one is also pretty reasonable as well. Earlier on in the season, her dad got turned into like a man-bat thing. He ended up being transformed into like this bat creature. Somehow like the man-bat from Arkham Knight. I think it's Arkham Knight. One of the Batman games anyway. And she's just basically scared of like him. Just wants him to get away. I thought that episode was actually pretty good. It wasn't, as scary as the other one. No one died or anything. I just thought the episode was super entertaining. It was a pretty cool. And I thought the villain was also pretty solid, and the villain also seemed dangerous as well because the villain, what he was doing is basically spreading his spawn all around, not like jizzing everywhere, but he was like basically spreading a bunch of mushrooms and all. And if the turtles didn't figure out what was happening or they didn't stop him, he would have been able to take over New York City and would have made everyone like scared of each other, just screaming at each other. It's like, "Oh, hi, John," and John just goes like, "Ah!" Everyone just been like that, just screaming at each other because they're seeing each other as their like greatest fears. So yeah, I'm lucky the turtles were there. And then the next one that I forgot to write on my phone and forgot to mention in the first recording is Buried Secrets. Now this is an episode in the back when they're chilling in the cabin away from New York City because Shredder like Stalin came over and just colonized the place, and he just took it over. So he basically just booted them out. In this episode, this one I'd say is based off of The Thing. It's pretty cool how many like different movies or characters the Ninja Turtles are basing their villains off of. This one's also pretty cool, but I think with this one, it done like the best, maybe like one of the best creature designs, and maybe like maybe the best like kind of body horror kind of episode. It was pretty like scary, and for a kid show it's pretty disgusting with like its body horror. In this episode they end up finding like a ship that crash landed here like ages ago, but ended up being buried underground. The house ended up being built over the ship, ends up being like some old ancient crank technology, and they find April's man there. She's just chilling, frozen up, like she was just being preserved for like months by the crank for a great grand old feast. So everything starts, everything's like grand. April's happy, she found her ma again, and but the only person who notices something isn't wrong is Mikey. But since Mikey is a bit of a retard, no one believes him. It's like, yo, Mikey, just stop, bro. This isn't like one of your comics. This shit ain't real. Alright, it's not like it hopped out of the comics and came to life. Like, stop fucking around. So but then as the episode goes on, her mom starts acting weirder and weirder, and then eventually she ends up revealing herself to be like this alien creature thing, and she actually ends up getting all the turtles. She actually ends up getting everyone. Like in this episode, it seemed like they were the most nearly almost fucked in this episode, because at first she gets I think at first she gets Leo, then she gets Donnie, and then she gets Raphael. Raphael actually managed to survive for a bit. He's actually able to get away, teleport away, and warn Casey and April, but they didn't listen to her. But then he ends up getting Casey as well, and Mikey. Mikey was the first one to know, and Mikey actually, he saved the whole town, potentially like the whole of New York City, from being mutated and turning into like creatures from horror movies, because she's about to pour the mutagen into the river, but then Mikey just the second he saw it, he just like grappled that shit away. It's like, that's my alien jelly, and she couldn't infect the river. So yeah, Mikey's there to save the day. Everyone gets took. April's also, getting took as well. She's actually being like, sucked into like this fucking fleshy tube thing. And I thought this was kind of bullshit, or maybe a bit of a cop out as well. It's just like out of nowhere. This never happened anymore in this series as well. Basically April is just getting sucked into this giant creature thing, and the way she like destroys the creature, the way she freezes, is just a bit of a cop out. I'm not gonna lie. She just screams on top of her lungs, and the creature ends up fucking being exploded or whatever. I just thought that was just bullshit, and just kind of like out of nowhere. It literally seemed like they were all dead, and then all April had to do was just and then the creature just ends up exploding like a balloon filled with ketchup. So yeah, I thought that episode was pretty good. The creature was pretty like disgusting looking, and the body horror I thought was pretty good, and the way like the turtles and all looked, they had like some Hubba Bubba had chewing gum tentacles all over him. I thought it looked pretty sick. I just thought that was a bit of a cop out, maybe weaker than the other ones, but still pretty good. But anyways, those were like episodes in Ninja Turtles that were like horror related. I thought they were pretty good. I liked them, and yeah, see you later.